Thank you, Joellen. I really appreciate the chance to be with you and to see you again. Joellen actually came to my office in the Capitol last month to help lobby for public education, and it was not a hard sell. We were on the same page from day one. But this is actually a really special meeting for me. I travel all around the state to all 72 counties of this beautiful place that we call home. But Columbia County is extra special for me, and that's because I have deep family roots here. My stepdad, who's been in my life for almost 40 years, is from Columbia County, and still has the cottage where he grew up with his family. So as I drove here, we drove past my grandfather's law office, and he was a judge here for many years, and my late uncle's optometry clinic, and later this afternoon, my Aunt Karen is having a fundraiser for me. So if you like what you hear, and you don't feel like you need to write a check right now, come and join us for some good cheer from 1 to 3 at the Parks and Rec Center over at 401 Cemetery Road this afternoon. We'd love to see you there. My name is Kelda Roys, and I'm running for governor for 2 very important reasons. The first is that we are in an existential crisis in this country. We are living through a dangerous authoritarian regime. And our first duty as Americans, and the first duty that I will have as governor, is to protect us from the harm of this Republican regime and to do everything we can to pull our democracy back from the brink. And I pledge to you that as your governor, I will use every tool at my disposal to help protect us from the violence and the brutality and lawlessness of ICE, from the economic harms to our farmers and small businesses and families of these illegal tariffs, which now it looks like big corporations are going to get the refunds. Meanwhile, we've all paid thousands of dollars. And of course, the cuts to health care and to education and to research that are hurting every single Wisconsinite. That's a pretty sobering way to start a Saturday morning. But at the same time, those of us who are in rooms like this all around the state know that in Wisconsin, this is also a special moment of opportunity. Because for 16 years, we have lived under the worst gerrymander in the nation. And that is coming to an end. Yay! Yay! So we are going to see, for the first time in a generation, a Democratic state Senate and an assembly that's close enough, one way or the other, that with the right governor, we can actually get something done. Yay! Now, yes. And I have been, I was actually in the assembly. My very first term was the last time we had a Democratic trifecta, 2009. And we did a lot of wonderful things. I had been the executive director of NARAL Pro-Choice Wisconsin for 4 years and sort of won my seat as an underdog candidate, knocking on 20,252 doors, and came in to a Democratic trifecta. And it was thrilling. I had the opportunity to be the vice chair of the health committee. We expanded Badger Care to over 80,000 previously uninsured Wisconsinites. And, we did a lot of wonderful things. But we also left a lot of things undone because we had narrow majorities and we didn't really have the readiness, the sense of purpose and urgency that we needed. We thought, well, we'll do it, we'll win more seats in the next election and then we'll try to get done some of the bigger things. And we all know what happened in 2011, right? Scott Walker and the Republicans swept in, and the very first thing they did was they attacked unions. They attacked teachers like Joellen. They attacked working people, starting in the public sector and then moving rapidly to the private sector. That has had a devastating, devastating impact on our state, on our economies, on families' budgets, and certainly on the quality of life here in Wisconsin for the last 15 years. And that is why I feel such a strong sense of urgency and hope about what is to come. Because we are going to have this narrow window of opportunity, and we can change the trajectory of our state from one that has moved backwards over the last 15 years to a truly progressive, forward-looking state that is worthy of our motto and worthy of our progressive heritage. I know that we can do that, but we can only do it if we have a governor with the political courage to get things done and the conviction of knowing what we want to get done. Now, I have spent my adult life, over 25 years, working to build progressive power and elect Democrats and pass good laws in our state. I have more experience than any other candidate running, including the Republican, in and around state government, and I have a long track record of actually getting things done in every kind of legislative environment. Not just when Democrats were in control, that was great, but also when we've had split legislatures, which we're very likely to have in the coming session. Also when Republicans have been in control. And I gotta tell you, those are really, really important skills to have in a state like Wisconsin. We're never gonna be New York or California. But we can still make transformational change in the state if we have a governor with those skills and that experience, and of course, the political will to use power to help people. Republicans, we know what they do with their power. They abuse it, they use it to hurt people, they are ruthless, they are single-minded. Democrats cannot be afraid to use our power for good. And I think part of the reason that this moment in our history is so hard for us as people who love freedom and love this country and want us to be the best version of a country we can be is not just because of what the Republicans are doing, it is also because we have seen the failure to act and to lead and to meet the moment of so many of our Democratic leaders. Yes. We cannot afford to have a governor that is not acting with moral clarity and leadership in this moment. So I'll give you just the little Kelda Roys 101 for those of you who don't know me. I'm from Wisconsin. As I mentioned, I've got deep family roots all around this state. And I was actually born in Marshfield and spent my early years in rural Taylor County, north of Highway 29. My family had a one-room schoolhouse, which probably is why I've always loved public education. And I actually had a pet goat as a child. That's another thing besides my experience that really sets me apart in this gubernatorial primary. Only one with a pet goat. So where I grew up was basically roughly here, outside of Medford. And my parents came here because they knew that as a family of modest means, their kids would get a great public education. I'm 46 years old, and I'm the mom and stepmom of 5 kids, ranging from age 25 to age 4. All of us, public schools all the way. And I know that my kids are not getting the same resources and public education and commitment from the state that I got. And it's outrageous to me. So my first priority as your governor is going to be funding our public schools. Yes. And we've got the money to give our kids what they need and deserve. This is not a situation, we are paying the cost, we're just paying it through property taxes, which are inequitable, which are unaffordable, and which are pushing people out of their homes and driving up the cost of living and making it unaffordable. We can't be pitting grandparents who've worked their lives, to pay off their houses against their grandkids' schools. That's wrong. And it's Republicans at the state level that are forcing it. So we can fund schools not just by the state paying their fair share, but also by stopping the unaccountable voucher scheme that is draining resources from our public schools. I'm the only candidate in this race with a plan to bring the voucher program to a responsible end. And it is time for public dollars to be used for public schools, period. Yes. On health care, I recently launched my health care plan. It's called Kelda Care. I put a lot of energy into the actual details of the plan, not enough into the name. So I'm accepting names if anyone can think of something better. But basically, it's a multifaceted plan that includes investments in mental health, our healthcare workforce, reproductive rights and health freedom for LGBTQ families. And the centerpiece of it is to open up our state insurance pool that I enjoy as a state senator to allow everyone to buy in. So an individual or a family, a small business owner, even somebody who runs a large manufacturing company or a union could buy in to the state pool and get the wonderful, high-quality, low-cost, non-profit health care that we enjoy. Amen. And another thing that I love about this is, how did Scott Walker get power in Wisconsin? What was his tactic? It wasn't to bring people together and fight for every vote. Division. It was division. It was divide and conquer. He said, look at what these public employees have. Look at what teachers get. let's rip it away. That's not what Democrats are about. We're about seeing what's working, seeing something good, and saying, how can we make sure that everybody has access to this? How can we make sure that everyone can get the health insurance that they need? Now, I'm a healthcare for all person. I think it's crazy that the richest country in the world rations healthcare based on your job or your ability to pay. The question is, how do we get there from here? And my plan is the fastest and quickest way to do that, and it also has the very important benefit of it will help stave off the coming collapse in rural healthcare that is about to happen because of the changes Republicans made in the federal budget. Republicans, just like Tom Tiffany, voted to screw over his own constituents again and again. I talked about my time in the Assembly. In 2013, I left the Assembly and I started my own small business. It's a real estate company that makes it easier and more affordable for Wisconsinites to buy and sell homes. And we've helped save almost $2 million in fees for Wisconsinites. So I really am passionate about economic development, about raising wages, restoring collective bargaining rights, and helping our small businesses thrive. Because I think that's how you get a vibrant, durable economy that works for people. It's not chasing Foxcons and, putting your knee pads on and crawling to the biggest corporations you can find to say, please exploit our workers, destroy our environment. No, it's investing in our homegrown entrepreneurs and making it possible for people who have that work ethic and that idea and that little crazy that you need to start a small business to be able to do what I had the opportunity to do and start a business. And that's another reason why I've just authored a bill to raise our minimum wage in Wisconsin, which is currently at $7.25 an hour. I know that Wisconsin can be a place where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And I know it is a place that can be blue again, because that's what drove me to join politics again and run for Senate in 2020. And I've been there since 2020, traveling around the state as a member of the Joint Committee on Finance, which writes the state budget. I want to say that I was very delighted to be sued this week by parents and students and teachers and education advocates, because they said the thing I've been saying for 2 decades, which is that the state, woohoo, fund Wisconsin's public schools. Yeah. Thank you for my assistant here. That Wisconsin's not meeting its constitutional obligation to kids. And I tell you about my service on the Budget Committee because I want you to know that I know where the money is. And I know where it needs to go. And we need a governor in this moment who has those skills and doesn't need to wait for a poll to tell them what to think about an issue, doesn't need to say, let's do a blue ribbon commission to decide whether we need to tax billionaires or not. We can't afford a governor who needs to bone up on the issues. We're going to have a very narrow window of opportunity. And so I tell you about my background and my track record and my approach to government so that you know what my values are. You know what I'm going to fight for. It's the same stuff I've been fighting for 25 years. And you know that I know how to get it done. Time and time again, I've been able to get tough legislation, good progressive legislation, through difficult legislative environments. I am ready to govern on day one. I have the courage and conviction to get it done. And I ask for your votes on August 11 and November 3rd so that we can reclaim Wisconsin's progressive heritage. Thank you so much. And I would love to answer the hardest questions you possibly have. Ann Groves Lloyd.
Excuse me.
Is it shared revenue?
Well, that too, but no, I'm going to start with healthcare.
Great.
At every municipality, whether it's a city or a village or a town in this state, is struggling with the levy limits.
Yeah.
The formula for us to figure out our levy limits is ridiculous. For a community like Lodi, which is small, and we are landlocked, and part of that formula is net new construction. Right. And we have done, one of the biggest factors that has impacted our budget the last couple of years is the percent increase in health insurance for our employees. Right. We have faced 25% to the additional shared revenue we got two and a half years ago was $84,000. Our staff health insurance increase was $78,000 that year, wiped out
Wow.
any new shared revenue we got. Last year, our shared revenue and our levy limit gave us an additional $16,000, and our health insurance went up over $70,000 again last year. We talked to the state about the insurance pool and why we're experiencing these double-digit increases the last several years, and they said it has to do with they never know how many communities are going to stay in the pool for municipal health insurance.
Right.
How would CaldaCare address that issue, particularly for municipalities, because it is eating up a huge amount of our budget, and of course impacting our ability to give our staff raises.
Right.
While we're trying to preserve their benefits, so.
Right, and I want to just affirm, you're coming at that from a municipal perspective,
Yes.
but I talked to a woman from northeastern Wisconsin who runs a manufacturing company, and she outlined the exact same dynamic that you are facing. So this is
It's insane.
cross-sector problem. The way that insurance works is it's the more you increase the pool, the lower the costs are supposed to be, because you're spreading the risk and you're spreading the administrative costs over more people. That's how it's supposed to work. The problem is that many health insurance companies are for-profit, and so they are taking a chunk of the money out that's supposed to go to providing care for big executive pay, for investors to get a return. The state of Wisconsin health insurance program has several nonprofit provider-owned plans that compete with each other. So we have both a very competitive health insurance marketplace, but also nonprofit provider-owned insurers. And that helps keep our costs not low, but more reasonable, because this is very high-quality care. So CaldaCare will, by expanding that pool, allow us to have lower costs overall, and it also should, over time, lower costs for people with private insurance because we're reducing uncompensated care. And part of the challenge, I mean, I was a Medicaid expansion person from day one, helped pass legislation to get Wisconsin ready to do our own exchange and expand Medicaid, and the Republicans just stomped on it. But part of the problem that we've had with Badger Care is that the reimbursement rates are so low that it doesn't actually cover the cost of providing care. And so that means that those of us with other insurance pay more. And so when I hear other candidates talking about Medicaid expansion as their health care plan, I just say, well, that's not going to work for the vast majority of people, and it's certainly not going to help our rural providers keep their doors open, right, in this moment of crisis. CaldaCare, I think, will work best as municipalities decide they want to come into the state's pool rather than keeping their own municipal pool, because we have so much more stability in such a bigger number of people. And by helping the small businesses that have been essentially priced out of the individual marketplace plans that they have. And it's actually feasible. It's something that we can do without permission from the federal government.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I will put a short plug in, and I've talked to Senator Kieski about this as well. If you could advocate at the state level, we would be happy to sign a 5-year contract with the state that we're going to stay in the insurance pool for 5 years to give that pool some stability if it's going to eliminate these really unpredictably high insurance rates increases. So if there's anything you can do to help us.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You know, we've set the legislation to require a minimum of a 1-year commitment, but I actually do think that for many people, that once they compare it, they will see, yeah, we actually want to make a really long-term commitment here, because, and that will over time help bring the costs down. And also, I want to thank you for sending us Sarah Kieski. I was one of her earliest supporters, and I helped talk her into running. And I just love working with her. I feel very grateful to this community for helping her win.
Go ahead. I'll ask my other nerdy question later. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to ask, can you elaborate more on the responsible plan to end vouchers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's essentially a 3-part plan. Step 1 is accountability and transparency and non-discrimination. So right now, if you get a taxpayer voucher, your teachers don't have to be licensed in the same way. You don't have to make your kids take the forward test. You don't have to report scores out. You're allowed to fire a teacher because they're pregnant. You can discriminate against teachers because they're gay or they're the wrong religion. You can also discriminate against students with disabilities. I think that's outrageous. So we need total transparency, first of all, on how much of our tax dollars in every district is going to vouchers. People would be shocked if they knew how much their school district, how many millions of dollars was going out to these voucher schools. And I think once you put those non-discrimination and transparency and accountability measures in place, hey, public money means you got to meet the same standards, hit the same benchmarks, follow the same rules, and you can't discriminate. A lot of these schools are going to say, well, never mind.
Yep.
We want to keep discriminating, right? We don't need the money. So that solves a big chunk of the problem. Step 2 has to do with the expansion area. So the voucher program started in Milwaukee and then went to Racine. It's been there for decades. That is a different ball of wax, and it needs to be handled differently than the statewide expansion that's only a few years old. The vast majority of students who are receiving vouchers in the statewide expansion area, so not Milwaukee and Racine, were already in private school before the vouchers happened. So this is a subsidy to wealthy parents who didn't want their kids in public school for whatever reason. They wanted a religious education or whatever. And so you just set a date certain and you say at the beginning of the next school year, the state will no longer pay this voucher. And you can decide, keep your kid in private school where they've always been, or they're always welcome to enroll at the public school, right? And that's free. So give those parents enough time to plan and they will make their choice. For Milwaukee and Racine, those programs include a higher percentage of children than in districts in the rest of the state. And so there isn't the capacity immediately in the public schools. And many of those students could not afford the tuition. Now, I don't love the voucher program, obviously, but I think it's wrong to disrupt kids who are thriving in an educational setting. If they don't, if there isn't really another option, it's not feasible to just bring that program to an end. So I think we need to set a date certain, and we say after this date, we will not accept new applicants to the program, but we will allow everyone who is currently enrolled to continue until they are completed with their education. And that is how you can do it in a responsible and thoughtful way. Yeah.
Is there a way with reform to prevent voucher schools from cherry picking their students?
Well, yeah, that would be the step 1 of my program, which is, transparency, accountability, and non-discrimination, right? If public schools have to just take whoever walks in the door and they don't get to say, I don't like the cats on your shirt, If a voucher school is going to take public money, then they would have to meet that same non-discrimination standard. Okay. Yeah.
I like what you said about the voucher program. My name's Debbie, and I live here in Portage, and I just bought a house in Portage from Partyville. I was dumbfounded when I got my tax bill, and I see that our school's added on, and I'm all happy for that. I'm in early childhood. I'm also just became a senior. I'm also military. So I made a whole podge of everything that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
I was curious, do you have any insight on early childhood programs or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
One of the neighbors, I worked very close with his party the last couple of years to get some changes, and I'm just curious where you stand in early childhood.
Yeah, well, I'm one of the very few legislators that actually has kids in daycare. My youngest is 4, and he did not make the cool choice that these young gentlemen did to come here today. He thought it would be more fun to go skiing at Cascade with Dad. So, I don't know if that's the right choice or not, but in any case, yes, I'm very passionate about early childhood education. I'm passionate about it because I think it's the right thing for kids. We can prevent the opportunity gaps from forming if we can get kids when 90% of their brain development happens, right? We don't want to have education rationed based on where your parents can afford to live, right? Or who you are or where you look like, what you look like, right? This is not an equitable society. So access to early childhood is really, really important. It's also important for our workforce.
Correct.
Every single employer that came to testify at the budget hearing, no matter what they were there to talk about, the engineering building, funding for UW, some, business program, every single one mentioned childcare as a huge, huge problem for their workforce. And that's because most of the state doesn't have enough childcare slots. We've got 3 kids for every 1 slot in the vast majority of the state. We don't pay our early childhood educators enough. When I introduced my minimum wage bill to bring the minimum wage to $15 an hour, everyone said, Nobody makes less than $15 an hour. I said, wrong.
So wrong.
People at Quick Trip and Culver's don't make less than $15 an hour. But you know who does? The people educating our youngest children,
Yes.
the people doing the most important and difficult and highly skilled work.
$14 an hour is
Right.
what my staff starts at.
Right.
I have staff that's been there 20 years, and they're making 16, 17. They do it for the love.
Right. Yes.
I know they can't change the world, but I'm here to get.
We can together, though.
Yes. I'd like to see us invest in all children, birth to 12.
Me too.
You know, because.
Me too.
I've lived all over the world, and other countries really invest in their children and their seniors.
Yes.
And it works, and I don't know how they did it, but it works. And what we're doing now that I've become a senior and applying for all those lovely things, it's sad, very sad. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have very detailed plans for how the state can invest a relatively small amount in early childhood, relatively small meaning like a couple $100 million a year, which is also, by the way, about the revenue that we'll be making when we legalize weed. And that's another one where I'd like to maybe find a clever name. So if you have something like, get baked for the babies or something like that, we can, figure out a way to divert that money to early childhood. But we're going to raise wages for early childhood educators. We're going to make it free to get an associate's in early childhood education. We're going to give expanded funding to centers that meet high-quality benchmarks, and expand the eligibility to middle-class families, so you don't have to be very poor to get federal money. That'll bring more federal money into the state. So there's some very, very specific things that we can do, and also universal paid family and medical leave to help babies get that great start in life.
So on my way out, I will leave you my business card, because I'd like to invite you for a center, but I'd also like to invite you to WCCAA, which is Wisconsin's
Yes.
Healthcare Administration.
Yes.
You'd be a great speaker, so thank you.
Thank you. I love to do that. Yeah, Ann?
So mine, of course, is about shared revenue, and in general, property tax reform. Speaking, I've been in Lodi my entire life. Our property taxes, this last go-round, we levied the max we could, which was, as I said, I think it was a whopping $10,000 or $15,000 for our budget. But personally, our property tax, we had to reval. We did a reval in Lodi, and the town of Lodi did it. And our property taxes went up, I don't know, it's hundreds of dollars, $700, I think.
Yeah.
The city of Lodi only retained a small chunk of that. Only about 26% of that check everybody writes stays in our municipality. I struggle to understand how property taxes are going up that much with levy reductions. I also struggle with, it is a very, as you mentioned earlier in your comments, which I really appreciate, it is a very inequitable way to fund things, and yet the state has forced us to put more and more on property taxpayers. So sort of globally, what are your thoughts about getting property taxes down and finding more equitable ways of funding things? And then shared revenue we can talk about later because no one else cares about that. And I do.
No, I mean, we all do, because that's about keeping our libraries open and keeping our streets plowed, right? And, it's the quality of life in our communities. So you don't have to understand the distribution formula and levy limits to understand what it means to be able to take your kids to the library on a Saturday.
Yes.
Or whether it's closed, right? So I just want to say that what Republicans have done on local control is totally outrageous and undemocratic. Like, Wisconsin has a great tradition of home rule and of local control. And sometimes that's frustrating for liberals because we think we know how everything should be. But over the last 30 years, Republicans have really done an assault on the ability of local communities to have their own say and have their own way. And part of it is about your revenue authority, right? Just saying, like, you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you can't do that, and you can't do that. But by the way, you still have to do all these services that we mandate.
Exactly.
And by the way, your residents are saying, well, why can't we do X, Y, and Z? And they did it to keep property taxes down. How's that working out? Right? The state was like, okay, we're going to take all the money that you take in, but don't worry, we'll pay 2/3 of your costs. We'll do that. And how many years has the state done that over the, 35, 40? I think maybe like once or
I was
twice.
going to say ever.
I mean,
Yeah.
barely, right? So the state has basically been taking the money and taking the power and taking the taxing authority and shoveling our state money into massive tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires and big corporations, including some of the worst polluters in the state. We used to have a really great progressive tax system where the more you made, the more you contributed, and that makes sense. And the Republicans just lopped that off. So now we, middle class, working class people, are paying the entire cost of the public services that all of us rely on, and local leaders are left basically saying, sorry, we don't have control over this. We're not the ones raising your property taxes.
Yeah.
And at every single turn over the last 2 years, Republicans have yelled about this 400-year veto and blah, 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 blah. Democrats and I in the Joint Finance Committee gave them every opportunity. They're in control. If they want to repeal that 400-year veto, they can do it. They have the votes. They could have done it literally any day in the last 500 days. They've chosen not to. We gave them the option. I have a funding bill that says, let's fund that $325 per pupil. They said, no, we're going to do $0 new dollars for general school aids. $0, even though inflation has been crazy high, right? And our teachers today are making less in terms of their buying power than they did 15 years ago. But $0 for our teachers. So they wanted to have the political weapon. They would rather stick you with the bill so that they can make an argument about how bad Tony Evers is and how awful this 400-year veto is, and they did it.
Yep.
And it's very important that we have a Democratic candidate for governor who knows that and can take the fight to the Republicans and not just be like, oh, property taxes are high, yes, it's a problem. We have to make sure people know why that happened. And yes, I do have a plan to fix that and to change how we do shared revenue, to restore the inflationary powers, to increase, and to make it more equitable. Because right now, the more Republican your community is, the more disproportionate benefit you get.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in talking about that same shared revenue change too, what kind of other options besides just shared revenue? Because like Ann was saying, property tax for us as local communities is a pretty large share of it. But I'll use Portage as an example because we have all these highways that come through here. There's a crash on the interstate or on one of the highways, all the people in the Dells are coming right through here and traffic becomes a nightmare. And in some ways, I think you could make a really good argument that maybe a county option or a local city option sales tax that gets distributed might be a better option, because if you look at, say, the Dells, people from Chicago or the Twin Cities are coming there, but they're using the infrastructure here.
Right.
And whatnot. Because the same thing that Ann was talking about here in Portage is our latest net new this year was 0.8%, and our healthcare costs for our city employees went up 13%.
Yeah, so that math doesn't math.
Yeah, it doesn't, and then people are just so angry. They're like, well, you're just cutting because, and I think with social media too, it's fueled cynicism. Well, you're just too dumb to figure it out. No, it's not that at all. It's like your hand.
I'm sorry, every single community and school district can't all be dumb and financially incompetent. That's just, if it was just one, you'd say okay, maybe they've got a problem, but it's literally every municipality at every level of government, urban, rural, wealthy, suburban, school districts of every shape and size and configuration. So yes, exactly. I don't want to get too philosophical, but I think government should be accountable. And there needs to be that feedback loop between voters and policymakers that gerrymandering, by the way, broke.
Yep.
And that the loss of local control broke. So when we talk about options for revenue, I'm for restoring local control. I'm for letting local governments decide what they care about. What does their community need? What does their community pay for? And if your community doesn't like it, guess what? They can vote you out, right? But right now, that accountability loop has been broken by Republicans because they are substituting their decision-making and their control and leaving you holding the bag. And, and it's not just on the finances side, it's also on landlord tenant protections or consumer protections or minimum wage or the ability to have a sick leave ordinance or, just any time a municipality has done something creative or thoughtful or interesting over the last several decades, the Republicans are no, we're not going to have that, right? And I want government to be innovative and to be creative and to figure out how we can deliver better services for people. We're about to have this incredible and terrifying change in our society with respect to AI and technology. And I have a lot of skepticism and concern about that. But I also recognize that there are really important opportunities that we should be prepared to take advantage of. And government should be able to do it too, not just private businesses. So we have got to allow for that kind of innovation to happen. At the end of the day, Democrats need to defend high quality government that delivers for people, that actually gets things done. You know, and that's why I decided I wanted to run, because it's not enough to just have like empty bullet points and talking points. You actually have to have legislation, and you have to have a way to pass it to make people's lives better, or they will become cynical. And they'll say, well, what does it matter if I vote or not? If they can't feel that difference in their life, then we have failed as Democrats. Yeah.
Yeah, what skills do you would you bring to the governorship that would make you the one for us to pick over the other ones that are running for the position?
Yeah. Well, I'm a lawyer. I'm the only one with an active law license, and I think at a time when our Constitution is being shredded by the federal government, and litigation is one of our best tools to fight autocracy, that's important. I'm also a small business owner, a successful small business owner, so I do have economic know-how and the ability to relate to people. I'm also a busy mom and stepmom of 5, so that means I can operate on very little sleep. And I have a low tolerance for nonsense, but I also care a lot about Wisconsin's future. And, you know, my policy and political expertise is by far the most extensive in the field. We've got a lot of good people running for governor, right? And every single one of them, you know, has good qualities. But this is a high stakes election, man. We cannot afford to lose. We cannot afford to let this opportunity go to somebody who isn't prepared to govern on day one, because they don't know the state agencies, they don't know the state budget, they don't know state policies. Most of the people running for governor are brand new in politics over the last 5 years. Many of them are folks that I have mentored and helped them to try to become, you know, to learn about the legislature, to learn about politics. And I think it's great. There is a role for everyone, right? We need all hands on deck at this moment. But this is not the moment to take a chance on somebody new who doesn't necessarily know all the things that we need to know. It's also a moment when we need to focus on electability. And this is a hard one to talk about, right? But at the end of the day, we cannot imagine how awful it will be if Tom Tiffany is the governor under a Trump presidency. How vulnerable we will be. It will be worse than Walker. We cannot let that happen. So we need a candidate who can win the primary and win the general. And I think if you look, you know, if you think of this campaign as three circles in a Venn diagram, you've got the one that says who's qualified to do the job and who's got experience, and there's a couple of us. You know, me and David Crowley, also a very qualified candidate. Then you think about who can win the general election against Tom Tiffany, and I think all things being equal, there's several candidates who could potentially win a one-on-one against Tom Tiffany. And then you think who has a path to win the primary election? And that is where it gets really hard. Now, the Marquette poll that came out this week was actually shocking to me, because I had assumed that it was going to show Mandela Barnes at 30% and Sarah Rodriguez at 25%. And in fact, what it showed was the exact opposite. That basically all of the candidates are within 10 points of each other, and the margin of error is 6.3% on that poll. So it's essentially a statistical and that's because nobody is paying attention to this race, right? The vast majority of voters are not you guys. They're not sitting here on a Saturday morning listening to and thinking about politics. And so they are not going to make up their minds until the very last few weeks or days before the election, because that's just how most voters operate, right? We are not representative. We need to make sure that we can unite behind a candidate who can win the general in the primary, because we are at risk of having a nominee squeak by, you know, with 20% or 22% of the vote, with 7 candidates in the primary, that is not going to be a strong candidate against Tom Tiffany, or that is totally unelectable. And as somebody with rural roots, as somebody with the most experience, I can tell you I have really looked carefully at the research. What does it take to elect a woman governor? What does it take to elect a person of color as governor? Now, these are absolutely achievable. Who's the most popular politician in Wisconsin of any party? Anybody know? Tammy Baldwin. Yes, 100 points to the retired teacher. Yes, Tammy Baldwin is. And what do we know about Tammy Baldwin? She's a Dane County liberal,
Yes.
right? And yet she is someone who connects with people all around the state. She listens. She focuses on issues that are important to people: healthcare, public education, veterans issues, support for farmers and small businesses, right? She's been a mentor of mine for decades, and I think she has shown us a path of how we do that. But when you're trying to be elected as governor, the one thing that voters demand from women and people of color that they don't necessarily demand from white men is experience. You have to have a track record and be able to show what you have done, because people don't necessarily trust that you do. And that's where my background really sets me apart. And just having that track record to say I was the only Democrat on a bill to expand rural health care access. And the governor vetoed it several times, and we finally got it passed. I was able to pass the first pro-choice legislation in 30 years through an anti-choice Republican assembly. You know, having those proof points about working together across the aisle, about getting support from Republicans is really important. And I'm proud that the only affinity group for my campaign is Republicans for Roys, because I'm going to be going after those Tammy Trump voters. I'm going to fight for those Evers Johnson voters. And we need to start doing that now. We need to back a nominee that has a path to victory in the primary and in the general. It's not enough to sit on the sidelines until June or until August and see who comes through and say we're going to support them. And I'll just say that coming from Dane County, I always get the question from my own constituents in Madison. And they say, like, I don't know, can a Madison liberal win statewide? Can a Dane County Democrat win? And I just say, look at the track record, not just Tammy, but Russ Feingold, Tony Evers, Jim Doyle. You can throw Josh Call in there if you want. That's who we elect statewide as Democrats. Do you know who we don't elect statewide as Democrats? Unfortunately, it's Democrats from the Milwaukee area, right? And I'm not just talking about Mandela Barnes, who underperformed Tony Evers in a blue wave year by nearly 5 points in a, yes, devastating election, right? But Tom Barrett twice. And he and I have talked about this, and he's like, I don't know what it is, Kelda, but there seems to be like a Milwaukee penalty of like 3 or 4 points. And I don't know how you win in a state like Wisconsin if you're starting with that deficit. So the other dynamic in this primary is that most of the candidates are from Milwaukee. And so they're going to be splitting up that vote share, 4 or 5 ways, because I've got good support in Milwaukee too. But I have a strong base here in South Central Wisconsin, in Dane County, which accounts for almost 1/3 of the Democratic primary vote. So if we want a candidate who gives us our strongest chance of winning the general and has a path to win the primary, that's me. And the other thing I'll say about that Marquette poll is that many of the other Democrats running have already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, basically just throwing it out there to try to get their name out there. I am saving my money so that I can communicate with voters when they start to pay attention this summer. I am running for governor. I'm not running to be, the most popular on Reddit. I'm not running to, get the endorsement of some far-left national figure. I am running for governor of a purple state that I know and love can be bluer, and this is how you do it.
Charles Franklin mentioned that he was really surprised at the lack of interest right now.
Yeah.
Do you see just your approach staying on track where you are right now? Is the right way to go based on the lack of interest right now?
Yeah, I think any dollar that you're spending on voter contact right now is a dollar you're just setting on fire. And it's hard to raise money in a primary, right? Because people who give money want to do their research, and they want to know all the candidates, and they want to say, like, whose health care plan do I like better? And we got to be a little bit more serious and disciplined. Like, we have to get on board. I have a path to win this primary, but it's not infinite, right? It can't, if we're going to do it, it requires people who see me and think that I would be the strongest candidate or the best governor or both to get on board. The earlier the better. And that's because just like when you're starting a business, you get more leverage with earlier money. And don't worry about saving your money for the general, because I swear Governor Evers and the Democratic Governors Association and every national group is going to be pouring millions and millions of dollars into our election. I am not concerned that we're going to be under-resourced in the general. We will have what we need to win. We have to make sure that a candidate comes out of the primary that lets us not just win the governor's race, but also helps us get the best chance to flip the legislature.
You think if you were to spend a lot of time out of state that there might be a cost there, considering the power of Dane County and Milwaukee County and changing and actually determining the course for elections?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a big state and I'm one human being. I have not figured out how to replicate myself yet, but I do have volunteers and surrogates and tons of local elected official support all over the state. So we are really trying to multiply my presence. But you're absolutely right. I mean, being here means I'm not at about 7 different events I could be at in Dane County. And so part of my ask to you guys is to be my force multipliers, right? Be my evangelists. And if you like what you hear, spread the word. Follow me on social media. Forward my emails, my very clever and well-written emails to other people. Write a check, make a monthly contribution, sign up to volunteer, sign up for Team Kelda. This is serious work, but we're also having fun. And I think what I am feeling, especially over the last 2 months, since the holidays, basically, since people started to click into this race and the insiders started paying attention, is people are thinking very seriously about this electability question and the governing question. And that's very positive for me. And that's why when I go to rooms like this, usually I leave with all my bumper stickers and signs and buttons are gone. And I have a lot of checks with me, right? And that's great. But it only works if you guys then take what you've heard and share it with other people.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I've been reading about you online because sort of the question that I think most people like to understand, because there's a broad spectrum of choices. I just noticed that in your Wikipedia page about the Unitarianist. So I grew up in that myself.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
So it's actually really nice to see someone, and I was just sort of curious to see, because it was very affected me greatly as a youth growing up, etc. So I don't know, I'd be kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, one of the things that I loved about growing up Unitarian Universalist is that you get to learn about all different religions and beliefs. And you're really given a lot of power and autonomy as a kid to make your own choices, right? And to have inquiry and to bring your mind and your creativity to all of these big existential questions. And I think, like a lot of people, I have a lot of different religious traditions in my family. My mom was raised Lutheran. My dad raised me celebrating the Jewish holidays, so that's a very important faith tradition to me as well. I married into a big Catholic family. I think that it's given me a perspective of the good that religion can do, but also how important it is that religion be separate from government. And we just can't live in a state where a small group of people get to dictate to everybody else their own morality and beliefs. That's not a free society. And I worry that we are not just in an authoritarian regime, but in a Christian nationalist one. And you see that in the attacks on LGBTQ people, especially kids. You see that on the relentless attacks on abortion, which, make no mistake, that is not a settled issue in Wisconsin just because they struck down that 1849 ban. We have some of the most restrictive anti-abortion laws on the books. We also have every Republican in the state Senate has voted against having a statutory right to birth control. They didn't want us to have a right to birth control, even though we know that birth control is on the chopping block, right? Trump is literally burning millions of dollars of birth control rather than give it to women in poor countries. IVF, same thing. They voted against having a right to IVF. So all of these things, as I tell kids when I go visit classrooms, I say, if you want to live in a free society, it means other people are going to do things that you don't like. They're going to say things that you think are not cool. They're going to play with games that you think are dumb games. But that's what it means to live in a free society, is you got to let other people do the stuff that you don't like so that you get to do the stuff that you like. And that sense of pluralism and how do we keep together this country, this experiment of 300 million very diverse, very different people, that's the only path forward if we're going to be a free country. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
What's your program for farmers, for the rural? I'm concerned, you're urban, you think of you as urban.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to offer a farmer to vote for you?
Well, I tell you, I spend a lot of time in rural areas talking with and listening to farmers, and they are really concerned about the same things that we are. They're concerned about their kids' schools and what's happening to rural school districts. You know, rural school districts have been hit in many ways the hardest by a lot of the changes that we're seeing. They're concerned about healthcare. That's a huge one because so many farmers have relied on the Affordable Care Act and on other subsidy programs that are going to be cut. And a lot of farmers have, you know, one family member that works at an in-town job, right, so that they can get healthcare coverage. So that's a very scary thing. The other thing is just cost of living in general, right? The cost of farming has gone so dramatically up, not just the cost of land, right, but the cost of all the agricultural inputs. So fertilizer, machinery that you need to farm. And so farming has essentially become, you're only making enough to pay your debt service if you're lucky. And so I want to make it possible for people to stay in agriculture if that's what they want to do and if that's what they love. And the only option for farmers shouldn't be selling off, you know, this beautiful multi-generational family farm to an AI data center or to a real estate developer, you know, or to a wind and solar farm, even though I love wind and solar farms, right? There have to be other options for people who want to stay in agriculture. And we do actually have some very successful programs that help farmers do that, but they have almost no money behind them, right? They might have like $1 million or $2 million in these programs. And so we need to really invest more money in that. The other thing we have to do is help farmers chase profits rather than yields. And this is so true in the dairy industry. You know, dairy farmers are producing more gallons per head than ever before, and yet they're making less money than they were. The cost per ton weight of milk has not changed in decades, right? And you know, that math also does not math, right, for farmers. And so organic, you can actually make a living on that, but you can't afford the transition because there's a 3-year transition time. So can't the state help fund that? Can't we have a state bank that offers zero interest loans to farmers to help them make that transition? Can't we advocate to the federal government to loosen the requirements to make it possible for someone to retransition if they transition before? There's a lot of things that we can do to help make it easier for farmers, but there isn't one single silver bullet. It has to be, you know, many different programs that are available that are successful. I'm a big believer in regenerative agriculture and in helping farmers diversify their income. But I also think it's really important to help young people who want to go into agriculture and don't have any land to be able to acquire land. Ultimately, if we want to continue to be the dairy state and to be the wonderful food-producing state that we are, we have to make it possible for people in younger generations to go into this field that they love and that they want to, that right now is completely financially closed off to them. Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you have said.
Yeah.
But what I want to know is what can we do, period? I mean, we know we need this win, and you emphasized
Yes.
that throughout your entire time with us. We cannot afford to lose in November. So what would be the top 3 things that we could do to support that person on the ticket to bring that blue wave to Wisconsin?
Number 1 is give money now early in the primary, because that will yield more support from, there are a lot of national groups that would like to invest in my race in the primary, but they want to know that I have a lot of strong support. And, we've been able to show excellent momentum. We are, no question, the most financially disciplined of all the campaigns. So we're on a great track, but we need to maintain that. Every day I have to raise thousands of dollars, and every day I have to raise a little more than I raised the day before, which is why I sit in my car basically until the very minute that I have to be somewhere, because I'm, making calls to people. So that's one. Number two is spread the word. So whether you're, in a coffee klatch or a book club or a knitting group or, a men's breakfast at the cafe, or you're online, talk about this race. Talk about, hopefully it's me, but talk about the candidate that you think is the best, and spread the word and try to get others on board early. That word of mouth, especially early on before people have started to kind of dial into this race, is so important in building momentum and in building name ID. One of the things that we saw from this poll was that everybody knows who, not everybody, but most people know who Mandela Barnes and Sarah Rodriguez are, but they have really high negatives. And so knowing who someone is doesn't necessarily correlate to support. And that's very exciting for a candidate like me who has some name ID, but it's lower, but I haven't spent any money on that yet. And so the more that I can get that sort of organic distribution and name ID increased, the better it is for me, right? That's one more dollar that I don't have to spend, right? I can save it for radio in July. And so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is sign up to volunteer. So we are doing canvassing, phone banking, putting together events in every part of the state. Not just fundraisers, but all kinds of fun events, sign making and T-shirt making, and dance party that's kid friendly. So we're doing a lot of things to get the word out. And however you're interested in plugging into the campaign, if you have something that you are passionate about, there's a way that we can probably turn it into a campaign event. I just read that Zoran Mondami had a shredding party, like a paper shredding party, and he had a big shredding truck because apparently nobody in New York has a paper shredder, tiny apartments. What a good idea, right? So thinking of ways to bring people who might not be as political as we all are into that fold, and signing up to volunteer is probably one of the best things that you can do. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you. Are you able to hang out with us for a little bit?
Yeah, I can hang out.
Lots going on today.
No, what time is it?
And everyone is welcome to stay. Please interact. If you have more questions, there is information on the back table.
Yes.
We have information. Any of you want to volunteer, want to join the group, want to put your name in the hat?
Okay. One of the ones that's sitting here, can I make a quick plug? As I mentioned in one of the last meetings about the No Kings protest on March 28th. That's all gone live. And the concept that we have created about the No Kings Caravan to start in Baraboo and Lodi. There are two locations, Baraboo and Lodi at 10 a.m., Montello at 12, and then Portage at 2. The idea to get multiple turnouts at the three different things, that's also gone live, and we've released the social media about that, so if you can, promote that, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Lord help me, TikTok.
Which is a hot mess, and every time I go there I win, but it's very effective. We get the most traffic on TikTok out of all those platforms.
Yeah.
That would really help for that No Kings Caravan.
Thank you. So connect with myself, connect with Connie, connect with Katie. Yes, I remember Katie's new to our group. Connect with Rich, connect with Ann, connect with Gary, connect with Ann, another Ann, connect with Mary Ellen. We are all here to win in November. And I can't emphasize enough, and I think you've emphasized it very well.
Yeah.
We can't afford to lose.
I have a question. I believe in postcards, especially if you're in a rural area. You can't knock on doors on farms. They're not there part of the time. They're in the field. They're somewhere else. I believe in postcards for rural areas.
Yeah, postcard, mail and radio are very effective ways of reaching people, but also now because we live in a dystopian surveillance society, we can target exact ads to your devices, whether it's streaming on your TV or your computer or your phone. So, but you have to do all of those things, and postcards definitely play a role. So if you want to write postcards, we have postcard writers.
She's a goddess of. she
Yes.
is a-
That's awesome.
Postcards.
Yeah, my aunt has already done like 800 postcards for me that are ready to mail in like July. She's in New York City, so she has to channel her energy into the state where it matters. Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so very much. There's coffee, there's treats, please help yourself, please stay for a bit. Like I said, if you're motivated by this and you want to help out, let us know, because we're here and we're ready.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, oh, if anybody wants a selfie or a picture, like, I'm here.
Any group picture?
Yeah.
I do need 2 minutes of your time.